Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chronicles, the Achy Breaky Paincast. I am here with Audrey Balsor, and we're going to be talking today a little bit about our chronic pain journeys, and we're hoping to continue this series of chronic pain information and create a couple more podcasts that go into a bit more detail. But for today, we're just going to talk a little bit about the situation in Nova Scotia and our own journey. So it's really nice to have you here, Audrey. Thank you.
Hello, Amber.
uh, so my name is Amber Chinn. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a chronic pain, disability, and mental health advocate within the community. So I do a lot of work around peer support, mainly for chronic pain and for queer and neurodivergent folks. But I have a lot of experience in peer support, and I'm really proud of the work that we're able to do. I'm here with Worth Living and Spirit and Soul Wellness Center. And yeah, I'm just very excited to be here and to talk a little bit about where I come from. I have depression and anxiety that I've lived with for most of my life. And ever since I was at least 18, I've been dealing with chronic pain. Mine takes the form of fibromyalgia, which is like a chronic, widespread pain condition, meaning that I have pain throughout all of my body in different areas every day. And there's not really a solution for that. So that's kind of my experience that I'll talk about in a little bit more depth, but I'll let Audrey introduce yourself before I go ahead and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, you've heard our stuff before, but if you haven't, my name is Audrey, and I am also a person who has a chronic illnesses, I suppose. I've worked with Amber in peer support for a few years now in chronic pain space, and I've worked in the social services industry for years, quite a bit of time. And now, yeah, we're doing our own thing, and we're hoping to reach people in a different way. So we're doing this podcast, and just to talk about our experiences, but also just about these issues in particular, about stigma around mental health and chronic illness. We're talking about what it's like to deal with that. We're talking to people that also experience that. And like Amber, my background is in mental health and neurodivergence for the most part, and chronic pain. So we actually have a few guests already lined up for our show, which is very
We
exciting.
do.
Mm-hmm.
Very excited about that. And I think it's exciting to be in this space right now because if for folks who are tuning in or haven't seen our work, there are 185,000 Nova Scotians who are living with chronic pain at the moment, and that's just like an estimate from I believe it was pre-COVID. So we can only assume that those numbers have risen with the experience of COVID and just in general, as well as considering how many people go undiagnosed or untreated and don't know what's going on yet. There are a lot of people in Nova Scotia living and dealing with this.
Absolutely. And the thing about chronic pain is that it's kind of an invisible illness for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So usually when you're thinking about or talking about disability, you have a kind of vision in your mind of somebody who is disabled, but that's kind of something we struggle with as chronic uh, illness survivors, is that people don't always understand what our needs are, and especially in the climate right now, DEI isn't always top of mind. So we are hoping to spread some awareness about accessibility as well.
Yeah, that's such a good point because I know that one of the most common things when I'm talking about chronic pain or I'm in a chronic pain space is just people looking at me and perceiving me a certain way because I'm young and
Mm-hmm.
seemingly able-bodied, and that's some days because I do sometimes use an accessibility device. I use a cane at times when I can't walk as well because of my pain. But for the most part, people will look at me as if I am exaggerating, or I don't know, weak in some way. Like I'm just being a baby about being in pain.
Yeah, it's
Um,
rough.
there's so little understanding when it comes to who is able to be chronically ill or disabled, who has pain, what does pain look like. because pain is such a like individualized experience. Like we really
Mm-hmm.
don't have any conceptualization of pain aside from the way that we feel it ourselves. And so when other people are feeling pain, like we can't see it, we can't feel it with people, even if they share it with us. Like there's no way for us to access that feeling except for from within ourselves. And that makes it
Mm-hmm.
really difficult for folks who are only living with pain as like an accidental basis of like every now and then I like stub my toe or something. Like it's not the same kind of pain that we're talking about.
Absolutely. And um, a lot of times too, chronic pain and mental health overlap.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, and there's a lot of studies that talk about how trauma is also a huge factor in chronic illness. Uh, like for example, like anxiety disorders are 5 times higher in women with fibromyalgia.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you the depression and anxiety rates are 4 times more likely if you have chronic pain. So we know now that if you have chronic pain, then you are 4 times more likely to have anxiety, depression, and a lot of times our what's the word I'm looking for? Our systems don't align in that way
Yeah.
because the way that the funding happens and like the supports happen in Canada is like we have our Department of Health and then we have our Department of Social Services, and they don't always overlap. So people's needs don't always get met because they have comorbidity and there's not a lot of help for that.
Yeah, I know that like going to a doctor for my chronic pain if I can and when I can and if they believe me, of course. How no, there's very few times when a doctor, if any actually, that a doctor has asked me about my mental health or like how that is impacted by my chronic
Mm-hmm.
pain. And they do exasperate like one another. They make like each condition worse. Like if I have anxiety and I've lived with anxiety my whole life, if I'm in a level of like pain and like trying to go about my day already feeling pain, already so conscious of my body and how it exists in the world and trying to like hide it or trying to like mask that pain so that I can function in the world, that's making my anxiety like skyrocket because
Yeah.
now I'm not just anxious because I'm in a social space or because I'm doing something. I'm also anxious because I'm trying to like mask this feeling or because I don't want people to catch on to the fact that I have pain or just being so aware because pain makes you so aware of your body in general and how it's in a space that like awareness makes my anxiety worse. And then that makes my pain worse, because I'm really anxious and
Yeah.
tense and my body's all like tensed up, which is not helping my muscles relax.
Just
Like
makes you
it
a
just
mess.
exasperates one another.
Absolutely. Um, I think that, like for me, people
Mm-hmm.
who don't know my journey, I was pretty recently diagnosed with a lot of things. Um, but they're all like I was recently diagnosed with ADHD. I'm 45 years old, so someone's angry.
I heard
Um,
that.
um, and I just got diagnosed with ADHD. A couple years ago, I got diagnosed with endometriosis after having a hysterectomy. That's a whole other story. So I've in reality had chronic pain since I was 15, but
Mm-hmm.
never had that awareness because I was made to feel like it was normal. I was very much gaslit by my profession medical professionals and people. Like you said, I was young, so people and let's be real
Mm-hmm.
here. There hasn't been a lot of not a lot of women's health studies done over the years. It hasn't really been a priority to figure out how women's bodies work and don't work. So yeah, it was a struggle, and being young and having actually PTSD, childhood PTSD, did not give me the tools to be able to advocate for myself. So it became something that later on in my adult life I ended up having to face, and it was very difficult. So I think one of the biggest things that I want to impart on our audience today, especially young women, is to absolutely, you know your body the best. You know everything there is to know about you, and not no one else does. And don't take no for an answer. If you really feel like something's wrong, like try to push it. And if you can't, get somebody that can. And I know there's lots of people out there that would be willing to be a mentor or an advocate for women,
Support even.
support in that way. So
I think that's such an interesting point because we, with women, we tend to normalize pain so much.
mm,
Like when we have period cramps, like I would have horrible period cramps. I would be like throwing up because they were so intense. I couldn't sleep. Um, but like that was just normalized. It was just like, oh well, get over it. Like you're just having period cramps. It's not that big a deal.
yeah.
And so there's always this like diminishing of women's pain, or women having to push through pain because they have all these caretaking roles that they have to like prioritize.
Mm,
Um, and it's just the normalization of pain really gets in the way of us understanding our bodies. Because I remember even when I was trying to get diagnosed, or when I was like just going to the doctor because I was feeling sick. At the time, I didn't know what I was feeling was chronic pain. But I remember I was driving with my boyfriend at the time, and I looked over at him, and it was just very spur of the moment. And I just asked him, like, hey, do you have like little pains throughout the day all the time? Like, do you always have something that's wrong? Because for
mm-hmm.
me, there's always a pain like in my leg or my arm, or and to always there's always something. It's never like my body just exists without pain. And I asked him that, and when he looked over at me, and his face was so concerned, and he was like, "No, no, I don't have that. That's not normal. Like you have pain every day." And so we had a little conversation, but it never crossed my mind that other people maybe aren't feeling little pains throughout the day. Because to me, maybe it felt like something that everybody was experiencing, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody was talking about, type of thing. Like, why bring it up if everybody's dealing with it? You know, like it's just part of
Yeah.
life.
We're
Um,
also brought up to not complain
yeah,
about, like, complain's the wrong word, but not to not
wine,
to talk about our experience, because it gets perceived in a negative light based on societal expectations of, just grin and bear it, walk it off,
be tough,
um, be tough.
push
Yeah.
through that
You
hustle
know,
culture.
even something like Nova Scotia strong bugs me
Yeah,
because, not that I'm saying we're not strong, and horrible things have happened and people are very resilient, but it's because, it's this kind of, for me, a visage of like someone being strong by like not experiencing the crappiness of the
yeah.
situation. um and it was really, really, really hard for people, some of the things that have happened. So I think we really need to stop we need to start allowing people to have space to talk about their experience and really
Strength
trying to
is
learn
such a
from it.
like a its strength and being strong was like one of the big things when I was starting to get diagnosed and feeling that pain and feeling isolated. And one of the things I was always thinking about was like, I'm in pain and I will be in pain for the rest of my life. So I'm always going to be like, quote unquote, a little bit weak.
Yeah.
Because in my family, this idea of strength was like, push through and
Mm-hmm.
like, don't complain, and like being strong. My mom used to say that pain was weakness leaving the body. And so if I'm always in pain, does that mean that I'm always a little bit weak? Because it's never
Right.
leaving my body. And so, like, having to go through my journey, I had to, like, redefine what these kinds of terms meant for me, like, what it meant to be strong. Because I was never going to live up to this standard that we put out as a society that, your pain is something that you should be ignoring or pushing away. Because I don't know about you, but as somebody with chronic pain, pushing it away or pushing through it just makes it so much worse.
It does make it worse. We have to be cognizant of it all the
Yeah.
time. And then, like you said, when you're paying attention to something, it makes it worse. So
Yeah.
it's like trying to find that balance. Like, you have to be like, for example, I was always an athlete many, many years. And before I had chronic pain, um, before I had fibromyalgia diagnosis, my chronic pain was my endometriosis. So I didn't have the same symptoms. So my physical abilities were a lot different, and I was able to play sports well. Like I excelled at things, and um, even sometimes I have to be like, okay, but like you used to be able to do this, but now you do things differently,
Mm-hmm.
and don't feel bad about pushing yourself. Like don't do a double class of an exercise. Just do one, you know? And I felt like I was always overachieving as in everything I did because it was the way I was brought up. But I can't do that anymore. So it's like doing things differently. And even my friends sometimes, or my family, like my best friend, he's like this one of my best friends. He's avid hiker, and he's hiked the Appalachian Trail, so he's clearly very athletic.
Yeah.
Um, and but I like to go on adventures with him. So like I'll see these really cool um hikes, and I'll be like, hey, like check this one out. Let's do this one together. And because I know he knows I have chronic pain, and he doesn't mind a slower pace or whatever.
Yeah.
But then he'll remind me, or he won't even say anything about it. He'll just say, instead of the 5 day through trek that you're saying we should do, maybe we should get a site and then just do like little day trips with the canoe during the day.
Mm.
Um, and then like that's his way of telling me that he's capable in something. He doesn't want to do it, but he's trying to be mindful of like my kind of capabilities now. So that's just an example, I think, of how I don't know, it gets adapted in your life, if that makes sense.
And it's nice that this friend of yours is also giving you like the autonomy to like make some decisions about like what your capacity is and your capability without just saying like you can't do that. Like you can't do a 5 day, like that's not possible. Like let's not do that. It's more presenting the this like alternative way of interacting. And I think that that's kind of important because we have to believe and trust that the people who have chronic pain in our lives know their limits and that
Mm-hmm.
they can respect their own limits and that they don't need you to like do that for them. Like it's very good to be mindful of it like your friend is, but he's also still allowing you the autonomy and control to make some decisions about what your capacity is for the day.
Yes, like I appreciated that so much. At the time, I didn't realize that that's what was happening, and then when I
Mm-hmm.
thought about it, I was like, oh yeah, okay. He's giving me an out. He's saying like, I'm okay with doing the smaller version of this thing that you want to do.
It's a very good when you don't even notice that that's what they're doing is making
Mm-hmm.
accommodations. Like it's just that mindfulness without also like without needing that pat on the back of like, oh, I'm thinking about you and your condition, you know? Like it's just accepting that this is part of like who you are, and
Mm-hmm.
wanting you to feel comfortable, wanting you to feel like you can still, do these things and have fun together in this way. I think that that's kind of really nice that you didn't notice.
I agree. So shout out to my buddy. I don't want to say his name in case he embarrasses him.
But and that is it's important as well, I think, that idea of because I went through this process when I was getting diagnosed of feeling like I wasn't myself anymore, feeling like my body wasn't mine anymore. Like I wasn't the one in control, and so I had to like, I would have to quote unquote like give up all the things that made me happy. I was a different person now, I could never be that person again. And there's that level of depression and grief that is part of that journey. Um, and part of coming out of that is realizing that like I can accommodate. I can still have the things I want. They just might look a little bit different than the way that I had pictured them before. But that's okay because there's still ways to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish or ways to like redefine what it means to be successful or what it means to be accomplishing this thing. And I can accommodate my condition and still feel like myself in my body, even though my body is very unpredictable and very uncertain and very, it kind of does its own thing, and I'm just along for the ride type of deal. But at least, it feels like I'm sitting in the driver's seat, even if I'm not like giving directions.
I really love how you describe that, because that's exactly how I feel. You have
Hmm.
this grief that comes with it, like, um yeah, the way of doing is no longer the way of doing, so it's a different way of doing, and not to like feel like you're lesser than, it's just a different path.
Mm.
um
Yep.
that's hard to come to, that takes some time, um
It's a process.
because it's a process. And you know where a few months ago I might have also been comfortable, like, let's say for example, you're starting a new work position,
Hmm.
and there's a whole thing like, do I disclose that I have a chronic illness, do I, and
Yep.
I probably would have felt safe to do so a year ago, but
Mm.
now with the stuff that's going on in the world, um, I'm wondering if other people are feeling a little bit of anxiety with that. Things changing as well, where DEI programs in the states are basically becoming non-existent, and things are kind of going backwards in the sense of equity, inclusion, diversity, and um, whereas you could be, all those rules and our laws that were keeping people safe are being lifted. So I have a
And
little
these
bit of anxiety
systems,
with that. Yeah.
like the accommodations and like these supports that they have, that we have to support disabled folks and like other folks, is already flawed. Like it's already difficult to navigate. It's already got its own problems, and the fact that they're now non-existent, like you, it's just making this problem already so much worse. That was already a problem to begin with, something that we
Mm-hmm.
were needing to be worked on, and now we're like from the ground up in some places, and it is really scary when you're thinking about like how do I fit into the world, and how does the world kind of respond to me, and that does have a mental health impact, because now you have to be thinking about not even just work, but like, can I disclose to friends, can I disclose to family, can I disclose in this other space, because maybe that will get back to work and work will find out that I'm disabled, and maybe there'll be
Mm-hmm.
repercussions, and that level of like being physically ill or having a chronic illness is already like a very uncertain way to live your life. But when you add on that mental health component as well, there's all this uncertainty. And we know, as like folks who are in mental health, that uncertainty is like a breeding ground for like suicidal ideation. And it's, it really is a tough situation for folks to be in with little support.
Very true.
Even in Nova
Yeah.
Scotia, like we're trying, we have some things like Audrey and I usually host like a chronic pain peer support group that's virtual online in Nova Scotia. We're on a break at the moment, but we usually host that. Um, but here we have so few resources. I remember going through my own journey, of diagnosis and looking up like where I need to talk to somebody who understands, because I can talk to at the time my boyfriend or my family, but they don't understand this how hard this is, and I don't want them to worry about me either, because I'm really nobody, like it's hard for your family to know that you're in pain. It's hard to tell
Mm-hmm.
them like, hey, i hurt I hurt and there's nothing that you can do about it. um I don't want to put that on them. Like, who can I talk to? And there was very, I think there was like at the time like one peer support group, that yeah, there was one peer support group available. And the pain clinic, like we have a pain clinic in Halifax, but it's got like a 5-year waiting list.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do in all of that time trying to navigate such a difficult journey?
I want to highlight a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of what you said about, um like, explaining it to our loved ones and things like that. They kind of, because I feel
Yeah.
like when people think about pain, they think about the short term acute pain that people
Mm.
experience when they have injuries. And there's always that, like, understanding of it differently than how we experience it. And I mean, most of the time people aren't trying to be dismissive, but when
Nope.
people say stuff like, "Oh, I hope you feel better soon," or uh, things like that, they're not trying to be jerks,
No,
because it is definitely not. Mm,
the sentiment is there. I
the
understand what they're
sentiment
trying to say.
is right. So I struggle with that because I try not to be snarky about it, because I know people are probably have my best interest in mind. But when I hear "I hope you feel better soon," sometimes I will say like, "Well, actually, this is kind of my daily thing. It just gets better and worse, and it's just a little bit worse today." Um, so I don't know. Do you have any tips for that? Because I've been falling short.
Yeah, because that's the thing, right? Is that people are dealing with what we would call acute pain, and we're dealing with chronic pain. And acute pain is
Yeah,
like, oh, I burnt myself, or I
yeah,
broke my leg. And the thing with that and that experience is that you have this understanding of, I'm going to get better. I'm in pain right now, and that's awful and it hurts, but that is going to stop at some point. And I can't anticipate that. I can anticipate that this will heal and I'll be okay and I'll go back to like quote unquote normal. But when
yeah.
you have chronic pain, that assurance, that like reliability, that foundation even is not there. So like I am not going to stop being in pain. That's not going to happen for me. It's going to
Hmm.
continue and continue, and it's just going to look better or worse depending on the day. Um, and that is a different level of weight to be carrying. That is a different kind of experience because like I know for the next 50 years, I will wake up and every day I will be in a level of pain. And it does not
Yeah.
matter what I do, it does not matter how I treat it. It's just going to be, it's just, that's just the way things are. Um, and so, like, talking to people, I love the like, get better soon because I resonate with that so much because
Yeah.
so often people will say that to me. And it's like, buddy, no, I'm not getting better. Like we just talked about it. Um, I think with me, sometimes I do tend to like I make like a joke. I kind of turn it into a humor thing. Like I do the same thing you do, like the snarkiness, but I do kind of go, oh yeah, but like that's not gonna happen. And I make them like kind of like laugh a little about that.
Yeah.
And then they usually apologize and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, like sorry. But I think with family and friends and communicating that like I'm in pain every day, um, sometimes that is really difficult in and of itself because it's already so exhausting to like explain like again, it's every day. It's every day that like
Yes.
I have to like tell you what level of pain I'm in, what I can accommodate, what I can't. And a lot of times people also forget because they have busy lives. They're not always aware that I'm in pain because I don't look it, you
Yeah.
know in their heads. And so it's like constantly reminding people, constantly like talking about it. And like sometimes I just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about the fact that I'm in pain today. I want to
It's
keep
fair.
that and deal with it myself. Um, like for me, I have this like pain scale because I would encourage anyone who has chronic pain to kind of create your own pain scale because a pain scale that a doctor uses kind of monitors acute pain, doesn't really monitor
Hmm.
chronic pain. Because again, there is no zero on the chronic pain scale.
No.
Um, but for me,
Everyone's baseline is different too, right? Like,
exactly. Because like for me, it's like anything from a 1 to a 6, I can manage on my own, and I don't need any support. And like I'm like quote unquote fine. Like I'm as fine as I can
yeah,
be,
like you can
and I
still
don't need
go about
help.
your day.
I can go about my day. I don't have to. I can might make slight changes if I'm on the 6 or something, but like you probably wouldn't notice. And then if I'm at like a 7 or an 8, it's more like okay, I might need to tell my friends like you know what, I know we plan to do this, but like I'm in this level of pain. I don't know if I can come, or I might have to cancel a meeting so that I can rest more. Like that 7 or 8 is when I start to involve other people. And then, like,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, a 9 or a 10 is like, oh my God, I need some help. Like, I might need your help bringing me to a hospital. I might need, like, you to even, like, bring me some water because I can't get out of bed, you know? Like, I need a lot more intervention at that point. Um, but I just wanted to highlight that because there's a whole 1 to 6 level on my scale where I don't need any support and I don't need any help. Um, and then there's this small area at the top of 7 to 10 where I'm going to involve certain specific people that I trust, you know? And so I think like it's good for the people around us who don't have chronic pain to be aware that for the most part, I can manage this myself and I don't need you to over concern yourself with it. But at the same time, your awareness is good and appreciated. And if I ask for your help, it's because I need it. You know, it's because I
Yeah,
actually cannot handle it on my own. And if you can help, like it'd be really appreciated, you know?
I do understand for sure. I think one thing too that I'd like to note is what's really helpful is when, especially when you're first diagnosed, you're first trying to figure it out, is to
Mm-hmm.
keep like a pain chart or a mood chart or combined. So just to track your symptoms, like track how you're feeling that day on on your scale that you've come up with for yourself of pain, and then also track like what was happening that day,
Mm-hmm.
like your exercise level or what you're eating, and just things
How
that,
did you sleep?
how did you sleep? Yeah, like um what was your mental
Stress
health like that
levels.
day? Yeah. And so that will help you to discover like your, like the patterns of your pain and also your mental health and moods. But it's really good for your doctor as well. So when you're,
Mm-hmm.
doing, when, if you are lucky enough to be going to a pain clinic or you're going to your GP or any kind of specialist, you have that information and you can share, and that's really helpful in your treatment
I
going
think that that's
forward.
great because it offers like it helps you to figure out your limits because again, pain's so individualized that there are certain
Hmm.
things that do impact us and certain things that don't, and sometimes they can seem insignificant, but like if there's a lot of pressure in the air, for example, like I feel a lot more pain, you know, so the weather impacts me. I know there are certain amounts of sleep that if I get it, I'm going to be in more pain the next day. I can anticipate that. Or
Right.
certain levels of activity that I know are going to be too much. And the more you know about yourself, the better able to manage it you are, and the better able you are to like communicate those limits to other people. Um, like then other people know that like when it rains, my knees act up, and maybe today's not a good day for a walk.
Yeah, all those people that say that's not a thing, that the weather doesn't affect your pain, are not telling the truth, because
Yeah,
every single person that I've talked to that experiences chronic pain or has a chronic illness has told me that the weather affects their pain level. So I think we need more
how
studies
would
on
it
that.
not? Like the changes in the atmosphere and the environment on your like your body exists in the world.
Hmm.
It exists in the world and it is impacted by the world. And if the world has certain weather things going on, that's impacting you. Like we talk sometimes about the idea of like cold and hot. Like I and this is so personalized that for me, I grew up in Labrador in Newfoundland. I find the cold to be very like healing for my body.
Yeah,
Like I find that I breathe better when it's cold outside, when it's snowing. I find that sometimes stepping outside helps to like make me feel better if it's a bit chilly, if there's a wind coming in, makes me more comfortable. Ice packs are very nice for me. And I know that in the summertime, I hate the summer. Controversial opinion. I hate the summer. It's too hot. It's too warm. There's too much like everything. And my body is so uncomfortable and sweaty. And the more uncomfortable my body is, the more my pain is felt. So I can't stand the summer. But then there are other people who, in the summer, they have chronic pain. That's when they feel like better, you know?
that's me.
They find that
Yeah.
easier. And they find the cold sits in their bones and like they can't get it out type of thing. You know, like the weather impacts us.
Yeah, I'm definitely the opposite of you, except now that I'm going through perimenopause, I'm not usually cold very often.
hot
Fortunately.
flashes.
um, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, one
And
I'd like to
another
get into.
part of my journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on another podcast, we should look at that because I know that you were
Yeah.
reading a couple interesting articles about it. So
I
we'll get into
have
that in
been.
another one.
Yeah, I'm going to write a blog on our website about a little bit about that too, coming up soon. But yeah, um our website is Spirit and Soul. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't have the URL. I'll have to put it in the comments. Um,
we'll link it. We'll link it.
yeah, we'll link it. Um, I don't know. There's been so many, like, I don't know if it's social media or because it's my algorithm, but I've been getting a lot of female doctors and people that have been showing up in my feeds, and they're talking about women's health, and it seems to be a really big movement right now of doctors and scientists wanting to figure it out and prioritize women's health. So I hope that continues. So yeah, there'll be a lot of things to pull from for that now, thankfully, than there was like
That would
20
be
years
nice
ago.
because I know there are so many like conditions that they impact men too, but for the majority in the statistics, women tend to be impacted by these things like fibromyalgia, which for folks who don't know, fibromyalgia is kind of like the last resort diagnosis. It's like they
Hmm.
rule everything else out and then they tell you you
Like
have fibromyalgia.
IBS.
Yeah. Um and like IBS and like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and things like that are, and then at they tell you you have this thing and that it's going to be with you for the rest of life, and then they're like, yeah, but we don't know like anything about it, and we have these treatments that like may or may not work, and like
Yeah.
like they don't know anything about these conditions that are largely impacting marginalized and female identifying folks, and that is frustrating. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to see that there is a movement that is trying to address those needs, because we also know that those numbers are rising. More people are having chronic pain, you know? Uh, it's in like Nova Scotia itself, we have a 15% of our population. That number I said earlier is 15% of our population who's living with chronic pain. And just for a comparison, in the rest of Canada, the average for like a province is that 13% of their population has chronic pain. So we are already above the national average for people who are
Hmm.
living with chronic pain. And our resources are frankly like insulting. Like it's embarrassing that we don't have more resources given how
Well,
much it impacts our populations.
the same can be said about mental health and,
Yeah.
you know, neurodivergence, resources like,
Oh, I just have to say, I was reading an article the
whew,
other day that said that the recommended amount to spend for a budget is 12% on mental health. 12% of the budget should be mental health. And the average is, or what we have, is 6%. So we have
so
half
half.
of the funding that we need to have adequate mental health care, which is also concerning given the fact that Nova Scotia has announced like a universal mental health um,
Hmm.
uh, initiative, which is
Hmm.
great. And I think that we should have that. But also, if our budget is 6% and the recommended amount is 12, and now you're trying to universalize that mental health care, I'm anticipating many problems with that if we don't adjust the budget to like better reflect the needs of the community. And part of those needs are the disabled community and how it overlaps with our chronic pain community. And frankly, we don't see a lot of that happening right now.
Yeah.
This is my
And
little like political rant there.
yeah, well, and the impact of not having resources in for undertreated conditions um leads it actually makes the stigma and disbelief um worse,
Mm-hmm.
and increases the risk of suicide
It
and
does.
things of that nature, and it's very, very sad to hear because we know this stuff. It's not like we don't know it.
We
So,
know.
and it's very readily available.
And it's
Um,
frustrating because we know that like our community, we often hear about this, like when it comes to chronic pain, one of the big stigmas is that like we are seeking painkillers or opioids. We have this big discussion about the opioid crisis all the time and like how that is impacting folks. And we know from research that many people who end up on opioids and addicted to opioids, which in another episode I'll talk about, the reality of those statistics because that's a whole other rant. Um,
Mm.
but the people who have chronic pain and using opioids to manage their chronic pain, they initially shot care through the medical system. All of them initially went to the medical system or some kind of mental health there to try and get support for what they were going through and did not receive it. So if you don't have any resources and you're not helping the people who are asking you for support, what can you expect to happen? People
Mhm.
have people need a way to live with pain because they are living with pain and they need a way to make that manageable and bearable. And so if you are not like including chronic pain and disability in your mental health initiatives, if you're not thinking about that, then you are doing a huge disservice because it's already overlapping with so many other concerns that you're claiming that you have an interest in supporting those folks. And yet
Yeah,
you're not doing the things that they need.
absolutely.
Feeling fiery
So
today.
I am lately too. Yeah, I feel like I'm taking some action. Uh, so I guess we could probably wrap up for today because I feel like we have so many different topics that we could talk about, but we don't want to over stimulate the mind.
I agree. I could
Um,
keep going for probably hours, but we don't need to do that.
I guess I'll like for me. I just want to end with maybe something, just one thing, and maybe you could do the same, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
Um, I think what I want to leave people with. I know we kind of ended on a little bit of a negative note there. Is that there are ways to advocate for um,
Mm-hmm.
more help and more resources, and we will talk about that probably more in depth and when we talk about advocacy.
For sure.
But definitely reach out to us if you need some information or need to be steered in a direction,
Yeah.
and we can help you with that. And I also just want to say you are not alone,
Mm-hmm.
but you are also unique. And so what we experience may not be the same as what you've experienced, but just know that whatever you experience is valid and you deserve to live a full and plentiful life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, hopefully this is a part of your journey to wellness.
I love that because I'd also like to add to that just that, like, your pain is real, your pain is valid, you know? And you deserve care just like anybody else deserves care.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that. And there are ways that we'll go into with advocacy about how to advocate for yourself effectively in that. But you're not alone, like Audrey said, and your pain is very valid.
100%.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We're hoping to do a bunch more of these. This was a lot of fun, Audrey. So thank you for speaking with
Absolutely.
me. All
Of
right.
course. Till next time.
Until next time, folks. Bye.